Let us pray. Gracious God, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of our hearts and our minds, even our spirits, may all of these be acceptable in your sight. O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, here's a question I'm sure that you woke up with on your mind this morning. I certainly did. What does Swiss cheese have to do with St. Patrick? And how can it teach us about our faith? Well, believe it or not, you're about to find out. But first, before we get there, you must know this, that wandering and wavering and worry, these things can create holes within our faith. It can make it feel as if there are gaps in the goodness of God's grace. Just like those giant holes in Swiss cheese. At least that's how it felt for St. Patrick. These gaps in God's grace led Patrick, as a youth, to declare that he was an atheist. And then one day, as he was wandering in the countryside, as was his wont, a band of Irish marauders, they kidnapped Patrick. They took him back to Ireland as a slave, and they put him to work as a shepherd. Now, living in the remote fields in Ireland was a hard and dangerous life. The Irish weather, of course, is harsh. And out there on those remote fields, there were ravenous predators. So despite his atheistic leanings, Patrick began a habit of praying. Praying to ease his fear, for protection, to carry him safely through the dangerous night. And on one of those nights, in prayer, Patrick heard, or maybe it was more like he felt, a voice. A voice that told him, as it once told Abraham so many years before, go back home to England. But you and I know that the thing about God's directions, God's directives, is that they're just a little bit vague. God did not say exactly where to go except for back to England. Often with God, there's a general direction, but seldom is there a turn-by-turn list of directions. And that is how it was for Abraham. That is how it is for us. And as it was for Patrick. Your ship is ready. That's all the voice said. Your ship is ready. But for Patrick, it wasn't enough. So in the dead of night, he set out. And he knew not exactly where, but he had one thing going for him. You see, Ireland is an island. So it doesn't really matter which way you go. Sooner or later, you're going to hit water. Chances are a port, maybe even a ship. And indeed, that's exactly what happened for Patrick. After about a month and 200 miles, he hit the sea. And in that port, he found there was a ship. And it was sailing to England. Clearly, he thought, this was meant to be. He was on the right track. When he spoke with the captain refused Patrick passage. And isn't that how it is? So often in our lives, we try desperately to be faithful. We even go to great lengths to follow God's guidance, even as vague as it is. And yet, after all of that effort, still we hit a wall. we come into a dead end. It causes our faith to waver. Could I have gotten it all wrong? That's what Patrick asked himself. That's what we ask ourselves so often in our lives of faith. Maybe I misunderstood. Patrick, as was his new habit, he listened for guidance in prayer. Your ship is ready. He heard that voice again, and that's what it said again. So suddenly he felt an urge of energy. So he went back to that ship's captain and pleaded with him once again. And I don't know if it was inspiration or exasperation, but that captain let him on board. Back in England, Patrick, the atheist, became a priest. And a few years later, while praying in worship, he again heard that wonderful and honestly sometimes frustrating voice. This time, shockingly, unbelievably, it said, "Go, Patrick. Go back to Ireland. Go back and minister there, even among your enemies." Well, that message did not bring Patrick relief. It did not bring him hope as it had before out on the fields. Instead, it brought him a sense of dread. Patrick was afraid that if he went back, he would be recaptured. He would be punished. He might even be killed. And on top of that, he struggled with resentment. He searched his heart. Could he offer God's forgiveness, God's love to the very people that had caused him so much pain? He did not think so. Nor, this time, did he pray about it. He passed on the prayer. And yet, in the middle of the night, he had a dream. God burst into that dream. In it, Patrick was trying to pray, but no words would come out of his mouth, only silence. And then finally, words did come, but it wasn't his voice. It was the voice which he had heard before. And he took that as a sign that God would do for him what he could not do himself. So back to Ireland he sailed, yet he was terrified. You see, being a saint does not mean that one is fearless. Being a saint means that you are full of fear and yet faithful. So on that ship, on his way back to Ireland, Patrick wrote a prayer, and this is it. Christ, shield me against poison and burning, against drowning and wounding. Be with me, God. Before me, behind me, beneath me, above me, on my right side, on my left side, when I sit down and when I stand up. That is a prayer of a fearful man, being faithful nonetheless. It is a prayer of a man who has just barely enough courage, who loves his neighbor, his enemy, just barely enough to bring them God's peace and grace. And that is what made Patrick a saint. And when we do the same, when we shine the healing light of God back into the tears of our past or even our present, we create a rainbow of healing possibilities and unimagined outcomes. Knowing this, St. Patrick popularized the Celtic cross, which is found on the cover of your bulletin. It is a cross with a circle behind it. The circle is representative of the sun. The Celtic cross is a statement that God's light shining through pain and hardship, even of the cross, can and does redeem and transform and heal, creating the rainbow-like miracle of new life, the new life of Easter. So here it is. Back to the Swiss cheese. The holes in Swiss cheese, I'm sure you know this, are created by the breath of tiny yeast-like organisms, which are added to cultured milk. It is these very organisms, this breath, which makes Swiss cheese Swiss cheese. It is what gives it its flavor. It is what makes it what it is. In the same way, God's breath breathed into Patrick, into us, into our wandering, wavering, worried times. It changes us. It makes us who we are. It imbues our very soul, if we let it, with a saintly savoriness. Such times are not mere empty holes in our life. They are remnants of when God's Spirit filled us in our time of need. They are remnants of when God gave us the courage and breathed new life into us. Those seeming holes are the scars of holy healing. Who knows where God is calling you this Lent? Perhaps in a present hardship, while not caused by God. That hardship can be used by God to bring light and blessing to others in the same way Patrick brought to the people of Ireland. Or maybe this Lent you are wandering, a bit lost, a bit unclear of where you're going. If so, keep going anyway. And if you're wavering, if you feel inadequate for the task ahead of you, or a bit unsure of yourself or even of God, keep going anyway. And if you're worried, if you're fearful, keep going anyway. Fill your fear with faith and prayer, as Patrick did. Open yourself to the breath, the Spirit of God in those moments. For that is how Patrick, and that is how we will become holy.